we are going to watch 9-0s here in Max McVety on your right, Tim Ealey on your left. Blue-red control versus mono-white humans, and someone's walking out of this match undefeated.
This is definitely the type of matchup where I would want to be mono-white humans as opposed to any of the splash versions. Really important for McVety to get off the gates fast, smooth starts, try to overpower Ealey before he gets much going, and the splash cards wouldn't do a whole lot of work.
For Tim, it's actually pretty important to be on the play in this matchup. I've seen some players test this matchup. It's actually very close. Now, of course, the blue-red control deck has a lot of ways to interact with you. They've got Thing in the Ice, they've got, Kozilek's Return, Fall of the Titans, a lot of spot removal, but they've got to interact early and often because the mono-white humans deck is going to put you to the test every single time. Town Gossip Monger was the start. Now here's a Thraben Inspector from McVety. He'll get a clue. The follow-up is a Kithian, and McVety will just pass the turn back right now. This is a Lightning Axe. That is a Fiery Temper, and that's a good start.
Yes, really important here to keep the board clean early on in the game. Being able to knock out these two creatures here, very valuable. Slow down the clock that McVety's playing.
We have a great staff. We want to help you out.
Just going to leave Max with a Thraben Inspector and a clue. Will Tim, as Tim will take his third turn of the game, picked up a copy of Shivan Reef. You can see that he has Tormenting Voice in hand. Looks like he's going to start there. Discard that Shivan Reef, draw 2 cards. Drown Your Temple and a Mountain were the draws. A Mountain, and he'll pass the turn back over to McVety. McVety will draw. Picked up another Plains. Now, the thing about this mono-white humans deck is, sure, you took care of some of its early plays. That was a really good turn for Tim on the other turns, but they keep coming at you because they don't have very many lands in their deck, so they're going to draw a lot of spells.
Very threat dense, and being able to generate a clue here and there also helps them keep up.
Values Lieutenant puts a +1/+1 counter on the Thraben Inspector and makes it a 2/3, comes in the red zone. Ealey will fall down to 19. This is Magnetic Insight. Discard the Drown Your Temple. Look at all that value. And now Tim draws 2. Picked up another Drown Your Temple. Looks like also a copy of Fall of the Titans. And the spell has already been cast, so he can Surge, but I don't think for the appropriate amount.
Facing down a 2/3 Inspector right now, so he can't fall that away. Probably going to wait for a better spot.
Shivan Reef is the land for the turn. And now the Titans may fall. Looks like they are. Going to get the Lieutenant out of here and deal some damage over to Max. And I think, this play is more about just keeping the board clear.
It is about keeping the board clear. I think with a Drown Yard in the graveyard, my preference would have been to just rebuy that and then try to fall away 2 threats. But if Ealey thinks he's got things to do with his mana for a bunch of turns in a row, I could see just trying to be as efficient as possible this turn.
Values Lieutenant is going to come across here. Or excuse me, Thraben Inspector, pardon me. There's another Inspector, brings a clue along with it. A Plains, and Max will pass the turn back over to Tim. Tim will draw, and I think he does have a Goggles in hand. Picked up a copy of Thing in the Ice, I believe, for the turn.
Seeing a bunch of cheap white creatures in play, along with a bunch of revised Plains, is taking me back to my childhood in a big way.
Warms your heart?
It does.
Here's Thing in the Ice. 4 ice counters on the way. And now just a passing of the turn. McVety will draw. He'll sacrifice a clue to start. Draw a card. Pick up another Plains. You can see now he's got more Plains in hand. Let's see what this spell is going to be. Declaration in Stone. Take care of the Thing in the Ice. A clue is given, which Tim can sacrifice with the extra mana he has available. As here's an attack for 3. It's weird to say, but Max has certainly flooded out this game. There's a Dragon Hunter.
And I think his list is without a copy of Westvale Abbey. He's just on 20 Plains. So he doesn't have a whole lot to do with extra mana besides sacrificing clues.
Lightning Axe, Jorien, both in hand here for Ealey. His life total is still pretty high. Max has not been the kind of unrelenting beatdown deck that he can be at times.
It's been slow and steady. He's drawn a lot of cards along the way, but he has not been particularly explosive.
There's Jorien. Lightning Axe. Discard Drown Your Temple. That's a second spell, which means Tim does get to draw a card. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you do get to draw a card. So McVety will untap, and he'll draw. Oh, and there's another copy of Declaration Stone. Got to clear the way, keep attacking. That's really all he can do.
It's pretty painful, though, for McVety that these are copies of Declaration in Stone rather than enchantments.
Yep.
Because the pace of the game is pretty slow. McVety's not applying a whole lot of pressure, and I think Ealey's going to be able to extract a lot of value out of these clues.
Well, if he ever gets to cast that Chandra, this game's probably going to end.
Declaration in Stone is spectacular when you're applying enough pressure that your opponent realistically doesn't have the time to be breaking clues. The pacing of the game isn't like this, so Ealey is going to be able to leverage these extra cards.
Ealey just passed the turn back. Might be time for Thalia's Lieutenant, but this is where things get interesting, right? Because you're playing against a deck that has Kozilek's Return, so can you make your move? And with that on the stack, this is going to be a real beating. Kozilek's Return with Thalia's Lieutenant's trigger on the stack. No way to stop this from happening. There goes the entire board of Max McVety.
And I think McVety had to make some sort of move here. I think he's unrealistic to beat Kozilek's Return, even if he tries to pace it, but that's the worst case scenario.
Fiery Temper, the draw there for Tim. He'll just pass the turn back. McVety will draw. He's got to find another threat. He'll pass the turn back. Now Dronyard Temple's going to come back from the graveyard. Now Tim will untap, and now he'll draw. He's found a Highland Lake. That's land 6, though it does enter the battlefield tapped. However, in the meantime, it's time to cast the Goggles. And these are the kind of games that Mono White Humans, they really can't come back from.
Yep. Particularly with Chandra on the way in a bit.
Speak of the devil, it shall appear. There is Chandra Flamecaller. I think it will bring a couple 3-1s along with it. And here come the beatdowns. So 6 damage will come across. Chandra will have 5 counters. Yeah, it's unclear if Tim will even need to use the Goggles this go around, as there's a Plains for Max. He'll play out the kind of the home stretch here, but I think we're going to see Tim Ealey move up a game here.
Yep. We've hit. McVety could stack his deck and still lose territory, I think.
2 3-1s. Attack for 6. McVety will fall down to 6. I think we might have Fiery Temper through the Goggles for 6 more damage. And that is going to do it. Tim Ealey is going to win game number 1 here over Max McVety as Blue-Red Control able to win game number 1 over Mono White Humans.
McVety's draw a little bit on the slow side, some interaction, but not enough pressure, and without any pumping effects, most notably always watching Kozilek's Return was just too much to overcome.
He didn't see the explosiveness. Well, I guess you kind of did, because he did have 3 1-drops by turn 2, but that Lightning Axe plus Fiery Temper really shored things up for Ealey in the early game.
I think that game is very easy when if Ealey isn't able to break serve there, but that took the wind out of McVety's sails, and then his clock was too slow to be able to outpace Kozilek's Return.
To the sideboards is where we're going to go, and we'll take a look at Max McVety first with his 3 Archangel of Ties, 3 Hanavir Militia Captains, 3 Silk Reps, 2 Eerie Interludes, 2 Hollowed Moonlights, a Stasis Snare, and a Hidden Dragon Slayer.
Not a whole lot of exciting action here. I think Archangel of Ties is at least a little troublesome for Chandra to answer. There's a reasonable play there. Maybe the additional copy of Stasis Snare, as Thing in the Ice is a problematic card in the matchup. Jace can be problematic as well. But I think McVety probably just wants to stay as threat dense as possible.
On the other side here for Tim, he's got the 4 Fevered Visions that we saw Todd Anderson use very effectively yesterday. 3 Negates, 3 Rending Volleys, 2 Dispel, a Void Shatter, a Chandra, and a Roast.
The 3 Rending Volleys and the Roast are great here, just more cheap removal, and I love the extra copy of Chandra as well. Chandra is the best thing that Ealey can do at his top end.
We will note, the Rending Volleys, the Chandra, I guess the Roast, he's addressing the matchup, I'd say.
Yes, and Rending Volley was something that I believe was absent from Todd's sideboard in Baltimore last week, that he said, I wish I just had a bunch of Rending Volleys, given how present the White Human deck was, along with random cards like Dragon Lord Ojutai that still show up. So no surprise to see a lot of people move to 3 or even 4 copies of Rending Volley in their sideboard this weekend.
Yeah, Todd last weekend having 4 copies of Eldrazi Obligator to get an edge in the Ramp matchup. He played against Ramp a couple of times. I know once on camera in Baltimore, just destroyed it without the help of Eldrazi Obligator, and then ended up losing to Kellen Pastor, who was playing Mono White Humans in the semifinals in Baltimore, and just said, I wish I had some spot removal.
Yeah, Todd's deck was definitely sideboarded to fight a ramp deck that really didn't show up. He had Eldrazi, Obligator, and a bunch of copies of Void Shatter, which I assume was for that matchup as well. Maybe some other matchups, but definitely 3-mana counter spells are at their best against ramp strategies. There isn't a whole lot of ramp at that tournament, not a whole lot of ramp at this tournament, so people have de-emphasized their sideboards for that matchup, and Ealey has followed suit. Not a whole lot here for ramp, a lot more for white humans.
Well, these players will get ready here for game number 2. Max McVety will be on the play with his mono white humans deck, and we will talk about Season 2 of the SCG Tour, which has actually started behind us with the Columbus Invitational and the Open that is taking place. We've got a lot of players here for. We take a weekend off because of the Pro Tour in States, and then Milwaukee.
Back-to-back Modern Opens in Milwaukee and Indianapolis, then Standard in Atlanta, Orlando, and Dallas towards the end of June. After Dallas,
we go into that next slide. Take a look.
We go to Worcester for Legacy, Standard in Columbus, Standard in Baltimore. Regional Championships August 6th. There'll be Standard. We'll have more information about that event as we get a little bit closer. Modern in Syracuse, New York, and then the Season 2 Invitational in New Jersey. Modern and Standard as the invitational formats.
Now, for each one of these Opens that do take place, we've changed things up for Season 2. So if you play in a Standard Open or Classic, you're going to get Sigarda, this beautiful playmat that is Sigarda Hera's Grace. If you play in a Modern Open or Classic, you will get Ghost Quarter, which has fantastic artwork. And then, kind of the big cherry on top, if you play in a Legacy, Open, or Classic, you will get Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. So again, remember, for each one of these playmats, you play in the associated Open with them. For Standard, Sigarda. For Modern, Ghost Quarter. For Legacy, it is Thalia. In a Open or Classic, you get this playmat free and exclusive, just like we've always done.
Yeah, very cool, and I like the different playmats with different art. Iconic for a particular format. Sweet way to do it.
Game number 2 about to be underway here between Tim Ealey and Max McVety. Both players are going to take a look at the opening hands. We'll see if Max can find a 7 that he likes and if he can put the pressure on Tim, which is so important in this matchup. Both players will keep. It's all about having a 1-drop here for Max. He's got so many in his deck. I guess he's probably just deciding which one he wants to start with. Good problem to have. There's a Kithian. Over to Tim. He's got a Wandering Fumarole.
We have 590 players today.
Max will draw.
We'll be playing 9 rounds.
There's the Plains. Thalia's Lieutenant.
Round 1 of 9. You have 50 minutes.
There is an attack.
You may begin.
We head back over to Tim now. Now, in the first game, on the second turn, we saw Lightning Axe plus Fiery Temper. It made things look easy. This time it's just going to be a 2-drop. It'll be Jace.
Big window here for McVety.
See if he can take advantage of it. He plays his 3rd land very quickly. And always watching, I'd say that's taking advantage of it.
Yes.
Attack for 5. Take it back, 6.
And now he's also moved his Kytheon outside of Kozilek's return range, which is important too. Trying to apply pressure without getting ruined by a sweeper. That's the balance these white creature decks have always had to thread. And right now, McVety's pretty well set up.
For Ealey, he's got an active Jace. We'll see if he's got a Fiery Temper, Rending Volley, any pinpoint removal. Lightning Axe, of course, also counts. Looks like he's going to start maybe with a Highland Lake. But he wants to make sure he knows exactly what Kithian does. And for 3 mana, you can give it Indestructible.
So if Ealey's planning on using a removal spell on Kytheon next turn anyway, he might as well do it now, because you don't want the opponent to have 3 mana available.
That's why you're going to see a Rending Volley right now. That'll take care of that. There's the Highland Lake. And no activation of Jace just yet as we head back Max's way.
Well, on the table, Jace can block, so no reason to activate it right now. And Fiery Temper is in hand.
Well,
so. Excuse me. To do.
It can block.
Yeah.
You're definitely right. I don't know if you want to.
Not good to block.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Here's a Silk Wrap. Here's a Jace activation. Mount in the draw. The discard, Fiery Temper. Got to pay a life. Ealey can fall down to 10. We're looking to get Thalia's Lieutenant off the battlefield. And that's going to happen. Now Silk Wrap will resolve. Goodbye, Jace. There's a Dragon Hunter. A Plains. And we go back Tim's way. Goggles the draw. Half the life total gone here for Tim Ealey, though. There's a mountain. Here's a Jace. Kick it over. Does Max have more pressure? Hey, Dragon Hunter. Come across for 3. Tim will fall to 7.
But you can see Ealey's hand, it's got mana and it's got a Chandra. There's something to play to. He is low.
There's a Plains, and all Max can do is just pass the turn back.
But at this point, I think Ealey can even chump block with the Jace, keep his life total high, and allow Chandra to take the game over.
There's an island. And Ealey will just pass the turn back. McVety will draw. He's got 2 spells in hand, one of which is an Eerie Interlude. And you have to admit, he's trying to set that up somehow.
Yep.
If there's a good way, that's the question. And you see Eerie Interlude's kind of an interesting effect. We've seen effects like this in the past, like Ghost Way, but exile any number of target creatures you control, so it can be 0 if you want it to. Return those creatures to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Here comes the Dragon Hunter. Wandering Fumarole would like to come and join the party. That's a 1/4 right now. Lines up favorably here. It's a free block, and we could see a spin.
Yeah. I think in Ealey's position, I like to try to trade here.
Yeah?
I can understand wanting to get to Chandra, but you take the wind out of sails of Eerie Interlude or any number of other things by just keeping the board as clear as possible.
There's a Kithian.
I can understand wanting to keep the mana available when you have a bunch of 6-mana cards in your deck and so forth, but I think there's an argument for a trade.
There's a Jace activation. Discard the draw on your temple. I believe Fall the Titans may have been the draw. Tim taking a look at Kithian one more time. It can only give itself indestructible. But good to make sure. 3 cards in the graveyard right now for Tim, by the way. So Jace might be flipping soon. Again, this is a format without fetch lands, so it's a little bit different now. See what comes next here for Tim.
It's a tricky turn.
Yeah.
You get the feeling he has the tools to stabilize, but he can get tricked up by a number of tricks here if he's not careful.
Yeah, you know, this is the kind of thing, right, where you sense, all right, my opponent doesn't have nothing, given the body language, because when Max had nothing last game, he was just kind of throwing lands on the battlefield. So you're thinking, all right, he's probably got a little something to work with. Now here's Fall the Titans, looking to take care of both these creatures. Though Tim is very aware that Kithian can protect itself. But now, we're going to see the Eerie Interlude. So that's going to put those creatures away. They'll come back soon. And what's actually kind of unique about this is, you know, Jace can transform now, but it can't -2/-0 something.
Yeah, I think Ealey's position was sort of in that spot is saying, okay, I can trade 1 for 1 and then take a hit. Next turn, I can flip my Jace. I can plus it on the Kithian. I have a Wandering Fumarole to block as well. I think Ealey's probably pretty stoked with that Eerie Interlude here because he's still not facing down lethal this turn, even if McVety has a way to clear the Jace out of the way. And now the door is open for Chandra to come down and maybe sweep up everything.
Now remember, the 4 cards in the graveyard, Jace can block and then loot and do its transformation thing to kind of fog an attacker. As here come the beatdowns. But having to beat this Kithian is a bit of a problem right now for Tim. Now there's your block. Pass priority. Of course, Tim's going to activate his Jace. He'll draw and discard and then transform. Pyromancer's Goggles was the draw. And that's going to go to the graveyard. So there's the transformation. Here's a Telepath Unbound. It'll start on 5. We'll see it go a little bit higher soon enough. Another creature in Thraben Inspector. Get a clue. Pass the turn back over to Tim. An island the draw. Now don't get me wrong. Chandra's good. But I don't know if Chandra is it. Kithian's a pretty good card too.
Yes. On top of that, drawing the Thraben Inspector is very valuable here because now he has a 3 toughness threat. Even if he pluses on Kithian and Chandra's for 3, McVety has an opportunity to get the Chandra off the battlefield the following turn.
Here is Chandra. from 4 down to 1. An activation of Kythian will keep that alive. The rest are going to leave. Now we head back Max's way. He'll draw a card. Remember, the Kythian right now is only a 1-power creature because of the Jace activation.
But that's still enough to finish off Chandra here.
Exactly.
It's critical.
And I think it's very important to get that thing off the battlefield. Because if not, there's a real chance that Tim just pushes the 0 button and reloads the grip.
Now, Ealey is still in great shape here. He's still got a Wandering Fumarole as a blocker that's available, and he has a Jace now at 6 with multiple removal spells in the graveyard. But at least McVety can get the Chandra off the battlefield. That's critical.
Another Inspector. Pass the turn back. We're heading back Tim's way. Roast the draw. We can't forget that there's also Rending Volley and some other removal spells in the graveyard right now for Tim.
And McVety with a very sharp play here. Instead of breaking the clues and trying to find more gas, he knows that a lot of Ealey's ways to interact with the Kythian are sorcery speed, either sorcery spells or flashing back instants via Jace. So he can simply leave the mana up, and if Ealey doesn't do anything, then at the end of the turn you break the clues and look for gas, and force him to have an instant to interact with Kythian.
And that doesn't have a ton of instants. It's got, of course, Fiery Temper and Lightning Axe.
You're at least making things a little bit awkward for Ealey. You may not be able to stop every single removal spell that he has access to, but you force him to play somewhat inefficiently.
Remember that Kythian right now, it's a 3-2 because of Always Watching. Here's an island. Jace going down. The target looks like it might be Rending Volley. This play's pretty sharp if Rose is going towards Kythian. And then you can respond in kind, which I think is pretty smart. Okay. So here's a roast. And what's kind of interesting about this is if you're Max, you want to make your creature indestructible, but then Tim can just recast the Rending Volley from the graveyard. And then if you do that, you don't get to crack your clues.
Yes. And Ealey still has Wandering Fumarole lined up against your one creature that's available to attack.
It's good sequencing there by Tim.
Yeah, very sharp turn.
The last card has a Pyromancer Goggles, but Tim's not going to play that. He wants to leave the Fumarole up on D. So let's head back Max's way. Crack a clue, draw a card. He needs a gooder. He's having some trouble getting those last 4 points of damage across. Of course, this is the thing about a mono white humans deck and most humans decks in general. They always come up short when they lose, just by a little bit, because they have no direct damage. They can't burn you out.
It's a tough way to do it. 20 through combat is a tough way to do it.
Stasis Snare, not a bad peel. The Inspector. Got to put Tim down to 2, I believe. A Plains there for McVety and pass that turn back. So can he get the last 2 and cross the finish line?
Well, unfortunately, he's got one creature that's checked by Jace.
Oh, boy.
And now this is happening.
Yep. That's a timely top deck there from Tim. It's a Chandra that'll take care of the Thraben Inspector. And the tough thing about this mono white humans deck as well, haste creatures, nope. None of those. No creature lands either. So you got to cash a clue in and hope for a good draw. Reach, longevity, something these mono white human decks don't really have, but they can kill you really fast. That's the appeal. Here's Thalia's Lieutenant. Pass the turn back.
Again, another threat that's checked by Jace. At least for now.
Mountain to go along with Goggles. Those are the cards in hand here for Tim.
Would not surprise me here for Ealey to simply flash back something like Fiery Temper to take care of the Lieutenant rather than plus with Jace, because McVety could potentially untap, fire off a bunch of humans, and get over the top of the Jace's -2.
Yeah, something strange like that could happen. Chandra going to move up. A couple of 3-1s going to come into the red zone. Max going to take this damage predictably. Going to fall down to 14. Got a lot of life to work with.
Oh, don't exile those tokens.
Not just yet.
Not yet.
And that would be the conclusion of your turn.
Yeah.
I think Tim, you have more things to do. And this is a pretty good thing to do here in Pyromancer's Goggles. Jace going down. Fiery Temper. Looks like it's going to be recast. So here is the Temper. 3 damage. Going to get to go 2 places. One to the Thalia's Lieutenant. The other to Max McVety, it appears. Max will fall down to 11. The nice thing about this deck that I have found, Patrick, is that for the blue-red control deck, once it gets a grip on the game, it's pretty hard for it to let go, but it also kills you pretty quick.
It can turn around, and Wandering Fumarole helps a lot with that, too. McVety, for as much power as Ealey brought to the table, McVety was very close to squeezing out the last couple of points, but again, I think now we're reaching point of no return.
Here comes 6 more for Tim. Jace will tick up. The follow-up. A checklist card. It appears to be a Jace yet again. And it is. And now we're going to head back Max McVety's way. And as you said, this is the point of no return, unfortunately, for Max, who will play a Council's Lieutenant, but it is very late to the battlefield. Tim will untap. He will draw a card. Picked up another copy of the Goggles. He will activate this Jace. Draw and discard. And keep in mind, he does have a copy of Fall the Titans in the graveyard, I believe. He'll start by ticking up his other Jace because sequencing is always important. You want to have it right even in situations where you're very far ahead. Now Jace will transform up to 5.
So McVety has to block this turn also to survive Chandra making 2 elementals. He can plus Jace and then plus Jace a second time, and then Council's Lieutenant dies instead of being one of the tokens.
That's true as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons here for Ealey to do it, but Fall of the Titans might just be a little bit easier.
Yeah. Here is Fall of the Titans. I'm going to use the Goggles. That's very smart because 1 Fall of the Titans is not enough. You need as many as you can get. And for Tim Ealey, defeated Todd Anderson last round, going to defeat Max McVety this round, and stay on top of the standings here as he is 10-0, takes care of Max McVety. Blue-red control takes care of mono-white humans, and this blue-red control deck looks very good.
Yep, very, very sharp, precise play there from Ealey. You can see earlier on in the game, if that deck is able to brig serve with things like Fiery Temper, Lightning Axe, Kozilek's Return, and so forth, once it's able to get Goggles into play or Chandra into play, those cards represent too many repeated removal spells for a deck like Mono White Humans to play through.